Pastor Peter was telling us about how he spotted something on your life. Tell us about that. What was that time like? You were hiding and then...
Well, I guess a lot of us have come from a traditional background. And so there's perspectives that we need to change within ourselves and within our own thinking, you know. And that was the easy thing for me to do, was just allow others to just carry on and do what they do. And I knew that we were called, you know, but there was still a process where I had to not only accept the fact that we were both called and not just him. We were both called. But then I had to take that and say, okay, if I am called, not even if, but you've come to the place where you actually know that you're called, what are you going to do about that? You know, what is my responsibility? If God's called me to do something, then he doesn't want me to be like my predecessors. He doesn't want me to be like my peers. He wants me to be the person that he has created me to be, because that's the person that he put those giftings on. So I can't, in all honesty, say that, because there's a season where you go through and you think, I'm not like that, and I'm not like that, and I'm not like that, and in fact, I'm not like anybody. And then, I just don't fit. And God goes, well, that's why I called you. And I'm like, you must be kidding, God. You must have got this wrong. You know, I don't wear twin set and pearls. You know, I mean,
and we're so grateful for that.
But seriously, plaid skirts.
Okay, so you're saying by twin set and
pearls,
pearls, like what? That I don't know what that means.
It's like the
uniform. Oh my goodness,
it's
totally, and brogue shoes. Yes. You know, I mean, that's the uniform. And
I mean, that's like a look you were supposed to have, like
no ripped jeans.
Oh, seriously, there'd be no ripped jeans. And
like fit a mold kind of thing.
Totally fit a mold. And I guess in some ways too, and I think Peter has referred to it when he did Legacy with you, of the background that we have come from. You see, he was a very, very successful. Very successful. So, I mean, in some ways, I guess I was living the corporate life world.
Sure.
So we were having overseas holidays. We had kids in private school. So I had a brand new car. So I could wear what I wanted to because I was my own fashion designer.
Exactly.
So, so there was this whole sense of, that was my world, you know. And so was I involved in corporate world living? No, not really, because we were totally committed to our church. And so we were doing things in our church, but to wear what I was making or designing was just normal to us, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it didn't seem like it was abnormal. No. Now, if I'd taken that and placed it in my father's church, it would have been too outside of the box for them, you know, or for that, you know, or for the genre or the generation that he was from. So that didn't fit. No. But because I had this freedom under my husband, then the work that we did in ministry wasn't actually an issue. And we worked with street kids, and we worked with the kids that were from dysfunctional backgrounds. Wow. We worked with the kid who wasn't going to go to prison like his 3 older brothers. You know, so we did that kind of stuff. And so that was our normal world. So when God called us to pastor, then to have this war going on, and it wasn't even so much of a war, it was probably second guessing everything.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which was
just
you
normal.
know,
So normal.
So I'm second guessing. God, did you get this right? You know, seriously, Lord.
Yeah.
And I don't fit the mold of either my predecessors, my peers, my apostle and his wife. You know, I don't fit those molds. Yeah. And then that's where God dealt with me personally. And he said, I called you. Wow. And I cannot bring to the table when you try to be somebody else.
Right. Wow.
You know.
Yes, exactly.
So that was really the making of it for me. There was another occasion where I was part of a conference, and it was a silly thing prophetically that we were doing, which was we began to walk around this whole massive, huge sanctuary down in Christchurch. And as we marched around it, you know, as you do, sometimes something prophetic moves and you're like, right, we've got to move, you know. Right. And so there is a response physically to what God is saying spiritually. And it was, okay, let's get up and walk around this room. Just like, we see the Old Testament prophets are told to walk the length of the land. And we're told to walk out in warfare. And we're told to step on the head of the enemy. Well, it was one of those moments where God had said, get on your feet and walk this thing out. Walk out what it is that you want for this nation. So as I walked around the room, I had this enlightenment from God that said, if you weren't there would be a hole in my ranks.
Wow.
And I went, oh my gosh.
Wow. Wow.
Wow.
So, really? Is that important? And he was like, yes. So.
And that was like the penny drop moment,
Yeah.
I guess, where you're like, I get it.
I get it.
Amongst 600 people.
Wow.
And I'm like, if you weren't there, there'd be a hole.
Right.
I'm like, just my presence
Yeah.
created the barrier
Wow.
for the enemy so that he couldn't get through.
Get through the ranks.
So I didn't even have to do anything or be anything.
Right.
I just had to show up.
Right. Wow.
And I think that's what God asks us to do.
Yeah, it
Don't
does.
be, just show up, and let me take over. And that's so much of what my life's been about. Is just, okay, God, I'll show up.
Wow, that's awesome.
You did the
That's
work.
incredible. I'm sure there would have been times, we all face these moments where, like we have these God moments like this and we know that we're all called or we've got things that God has put on our lives and challenges, callings on our lives. But I'm sure walking out as a woman in those days, it would have been I'm trying to find the right word for it. It's not a challenge, but when you have those God moments, and then I'm sure you were talking to us just before behind there when you'd show up to preach and then men would leave because it was you as a woman turning up to sleep. Yet you had that God encounter of, I need to hold my position and my rank because I need to hold that space in God's kingdom.
It's like a trailblazing, right?
Yeah,
it's
it is.
just
It's
completely new
pioneering.
territory. You don't have someone in front of you showing you the way. You're kind of it. So you have this revelation that you've actually called me. Not just that pastor's wife as a role, which you were talking to us about before, about being a pastor's wife and what that sort of looked like, but that revelation, you've called me. Amazing.
And I know today there's so many different issues that people face. We might not face, thankfully, to people like you. We don't face that challenge as a generation. We genuinely don't. And we're so grateful for it. But we do face other issues that necessarily your generation didn't face. And we know as a generation that we're called to do things, but we hit walls all the time.
Absolutely.
So how did you break those walls and how did you push through those barriers? Because we need those keys.
We want to know.
Well, there's a couple of things that are really quite strategic and really important to me, okay?
Yeah.
So if I can put it that way, because I think everybody does have their own journey and they do have their own battles,
Yeah.
and their battlefield is different from mine. But there's certain keys that along the way that God has given us.
Yeah.
And one of the prophetic words over our life before we even began pastoring is we came out of, because we went to Bible college together. And when Peter was working, I would help him in his work, right? So I would do what I could to carry my corner of the stretcher. So we were very familiar with working with one another.
Right.
So we'd been doing that for years, okay? So whether he was self-employed with his own business, whether he was commission sales, whatever, we'd worked quite in tandem quite well. And so when we went to Bible college, we also went to college together. But the prophetic word that came over us in our presbytery was that we would be forerunners.
Wow.
And in a forerunner, of course, it's like you're carving new territory here. So don't actually look to see if there's a pattern that you can follow.
Right.
You need to listen to me so that I can show you which way to go. This is the way, walk ye in it.
Right.
So there wasn't like a set pattern for us. And we would see and learn and glean and grow. But when I even look at the structure of City Impact Church, it is so different.
Right.
And when back in the day we created our directors and our things like that, it was so different. That pattern didn't exist in other churches where we went, oh, gee, we've read that book on church growth, now let's do it.
Sure.
Okay, so that wasn't there. But when you refer back to our prophetic word, it was you will be a forerunner. Now, that prophetic word was over both of us, not just one.
Right.
So that was interesting.
Yeah.
There was another prophetic word over us that we would both be Davids, which again is interesting. So we've both got that prophetic word over
Both of
that,
you.
both of us. Yeah. And Pastor Rob Morris stood there and he said, he said, I've never seen this before. He said, but I see two Davids. He said, because he's like hesitant.
Right.
And he's like, I've not seen this. And so he's like conversing with God because he's hesitant in what he sees. And he says, I see two Davids. So there's the prophetic that was confirmed by those who we saw as the prophets and apostles over our lives. So there's that aspect of our that we can fall back on to actually know that those things have been said over us.
Yeah.
So that's not just said to us as like, gee, that's your own personal enlightenment, but that is said in the spirit realm as well. So it's an authority that you can then walk in.
Right.
But for me, I think one of the big keys is like, I don't know if you've ever heard that thing about, you've got to be under a covering. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
and you can't come out from underneath your covering.
Yeah.
Okay. So I see my covering as so different because I see it like an umbrella. If I need an umbrella in the rain, I put it up and I run through the rain. But my umbrella goes with me.
Yes.
So it's not like I come out. If I come out from underneath my umbrella, I'll get wet. Of course I will. But my umbrella goes with me.
Right.
Sure.
So whichever direction I go in,
Yeah.
You're covering.
my umbrella goes with me.
Right.
And that is exactly who my husband is.
Right.
He, wherever I go, whatever I do, he's I've got your back. And if it turns to custard, that's okay because I'll pick up the pieces. So even when I was first asked by him to take platform,
Yeah.
to speak, to worship lead, whatever those things were, I knew I was totally confident that this man not only had my back, but his covering wasn't like, this is my covering and don't you get out from underneath it. He is like, I'm going to cover you wherever you go.
It's not a control thing, is it?
Totally not. It's a release thing. It's like, would you run?
Yeah.
And I'll make sure I'm there.
Wow.
So cool.
It's so cool. And that is so much freedom.
Yeah. Sure.
He is not threatened, and he never has been in a place where he had to be able to do something before I could do it. Can I
Yeah, go
does
for
that
it,
need
please.
explaining?
Yeah.
Does it? Do you know what I mean? It's like so often we find people, not just guys, but people who are threatened or intimidated by the gifting on someone else.
Wow.
And because they can't come to terms with that gifting, nor do they even know how to control or steer that gifting because it's foreign to them, that they then remove that from being part of what they will accept responsibility for.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, but he's not like that.
No.
So he'll take responsibility even though it may not be his strength. It's like, yeah, you do that. Yeah, you go for it. I mean, to do the creative that we do as City Impact Church honestly comes from his ability, his open spirit, because he doesn't do what we do creatively. When I first said to him that I wanted to do this Christmas service, this carol service, my heart was that the name of Jesus be lifted over our nation at Christmas time. I mean, that was the bottom line for it. So how do we do that? Well, actually, we take worship outside.
Right.
So we created this outdoor Christmas carol service. Was that his gifting? No. Was that his strength? No. Was that even really his vision? But he captivated because his vision and his heart is New Zealand for Christ.
Right.
Is people to be reached for Jesus Christ. Was it in conflict with his vision? Absolutely not.
No.
Did it add to what he wanted to do? Sure. And then he underwrites it. So
That's amazing.
so yeah, that is amazing. So to get something like that through a board or through
true.
a dozen people who have to sign off, it came up against a brick wall.
He's kind of like a holy talent spotter, eh? Like spotting the talents on people and then releasing them like into the
Absolutely.
giftings, eh?
Good way of putting it.
Like
And if he
elevating them.
if he hadn't released that creativity that he saw in my life, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing today.
No, we wouldn't.
No, we wouldn't have attracted the Joshes and the Ants and the Jasons and the Canes. We wouldn't have attracted those people because there's a creative freedom at City Impact Church.
It's true.
But he facilitated it.
He's not threatened by it.
He's not
at
threatened
all.
by it, nor did he see it as something that was contrary to what he was doing, or he saw it as enhancing what he was doing, where he was going, and what the kingdom of God could be in New Zealand.
That's such a pure leadership, though, right?
So it's not just releasing women, it's releasing creativity. It's releasing the giftings that are on people's lives.
Yeah.
Regardless of gender, right?
Regardless of gender and regardless of age. You see, we have children who come out of Gateway at 12 and can join an impact team and an impact hub. So they're doing cameras, they're doing lighting, they're doing music. Our children's band is children. You know, our school band is the school kids. So it doesn't matter about gender. It doesn't, all of those things, age doesn't matter either. He has released all of it. But that's because of the bigness of his spirit. The thing is he's not threatened by it. If we can do something better than he can, he's like, I am all for it. And that's the bottom line. He knows that the creativity that comes into the house is done better by others than by him. That's why he put me as the worship director, because he really felt that it was done better by others than it was by him.
Not just him on the bongo or the tambourine. He just wanted a bit more.
not. So that's the releasing thing, is let me give it to somebody who can actually take this to another level.
That's good.
And that emanates right throughout our church.
It does.
It really, really does. Is I'm going to give this to you because I know you can do it better than I can. And it's not going to drop to the ground. So please take it from me. How many times do we do that, Cole? Please take it.
It's awesome. I thought you were saying such an interesting thing when you were talking about, sorry, just to divert it a little bit. I know that we'll wrap up soon, but you were talking about carving a new path. And if I think of your generation, to carve a path, they sort of stepped out. Like they stepped out and did something new. Whereas I feel for our generation, with generational churches, we try and carve a path within what's there. So what would you say to young people in their church that kind of want to carve a path, want to stay under, you guys covering, but feel to do something a bit different, don't want to be rebellious? What would be your advice to those young people that are like, yeah, I'm called to do something different, but I want to do it in the right place?
It's a bit hard to answer because it so much depends on the individual.
Right.
And I think the heart of the matter is, what is their heart?
Yeah, sure.
You know? And when Peter asked me to do things, I did them because he recognized a gifting on my life. Now, we're to the size now where we don't know every single individual, but we still do spot giftings, but that doesn't mean to say we don't miss it too. It's easy to miss it. And so it's got to be brought to the fore. It's got to be, facilitated in some way. And can that voice be heard? I hope so. I really do hope so. And I hope that each individual within City Impact isn't under a leader that would not recognize that. And I get that's something that I think we've talked about so often, is recognizing the leadership gift, because a leader spots what is in somebody else. A manager just manages whatever the project, the event, or the task is, whereas a leader truly spots that true gifting. And so do we have enough leadership gifts that are functioning to actually bring out the gold? Because there's gold there.
In everyone.
There is absolute gold in everyone. And do we have the courage to say to someone, I see the gold, but I also see the rock that needs to be broken away
Yes.
from it. Because we're not good at accountability.
Sure.
We're really, really not. And we can give, if we're a manager, we will give them a whole list of things that they have to do in order to get rid of the rock. But whereas if we're a leader, we know what to speak into the gold so that it grows and the rock breaks off. So there's two different things at work there. So your manager will go, come on, we got to get rid of this rock, to expose the gold. Whereas a leader will go, I'm going to speak to that gold and it's going to grow, it's going to grow, it's going to grow, and all the rock is just going to fall by the wayside. Which is the way God does things in our lives. He says, imbibe more of me, and the less of you will just fall off. It will just take care of itself.
awesome.
The rebellion will take care of itself. The
Right.
double guessing things will take care
Sure.
of themselves. Just follow me.
It's very good. That's awesome.
Really good.
That's so good. I think that's such a good word for young people. And God makes a way for people regardless, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask as well, you alluded to, and Pastor Peter alluded to when he was here as well, you guys' journey, and you talked about stepping out of that corporate world where you had like the nice car and the clothes. We often hear Pastor Peter's side of that. He talks about how he was cleaning toilets. And I was surprised.
Not
You
a
know-
good visual.
But you stepped
does
out of
that.
corporate. You started this church. You didn't have any money left, and so he started cleaning toilets at the local high school, right? And I was surprised when I talked to you that you were like, I was like, well, what were you doing? And you said I was cleaning them too. So can you tell us what was that journey like, going from having everything, everything you ever wanted? Okay, not that much, but like going from
Comfortable.
that to cleaning toilets, all for God.
Yeah.
I can honestly say this,
Yeah.
that everything that we had accumulated,
Yeah.
and we had actually accumulated enough to now go and live in Canada for a couple of years.
Right, and that's where you're from, right?
And so that was our point, okay? So we had accumulated wealth
Right.
to a point where we were buoyant enough not only to, have a satisfactory life, but also so we thought, right, God, we don't know what you want for our lives. So, in the practical, let's go and live in Canada for a couple of
Right.
years.
Wow.
The boys, as you do,
Yeah.
the boys were like, I think 7 and 9, something like that. And it's like, that was doable.
Yeah, yeah.
So we accumulated a nest egg, which was really a smart thing.
Nest egg.
So we got to a point where we had accumulated some wealth, and then God said to us, I want you to start a church. And we got, good, that's handy, so we can do this.
yeah, sure.
It wasn't like, this is not doable. How on earth are we going to make this happen? It was like, okay, God, if that's what you want us to do, we'll do. So off we went and we began this. And I can honestly say that throughout those seasons, as we took the things and the assets that we had accumulated and, downgraded and got, traded in the cars and things like that, that it was like, thank you, Lord, that we've got the assets
Wow.
to be able to fund what it is that you've asked us to do.
Wow.
And I honestly, look, your husband's in business. So you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because you make a decision together that this is worth going for.
Right.
And if it's a seal of God on it, it will have success.
Yeah.
So we'll just take what we've got and we'll make this happen.
Yeah.
And it's not really a hardship because there's an achievement and a goal and an assurance on the inside that we're doing the will of God. So whether it's starting a business and having to then focus all of your assets on underwriting that for the first few years and not being able to go on holiday and not being able to buy new shoes, that's okay.
Yeah.
Because the joy of what you're doing and knowing that you're in the will of God just overrides all of that.
Yeah.
So it's just a place that you find yourself in. Yeah. And so with the assets getting utilized for the kingdom, what better thing could happen? And even our home, it has such a small mortgage on it that we had the ability to keep remortgaging. And once again, it was thank you, Lord, that we've got such an asset that we can keep going.
Wow.
And we will keep going until we begin to get to
Amazing.
the end. We'll exhaust whatever, we have to achieve what it is that you've asked us to do. So but it wasn't like, gee, you're amazing people. It's like, no, we had the I must, God said.
Wow.
You know, and to walk away from that, oh my goodness, I never want to walk away from the will of God.
No.
I mean, the consequences of that are just not even worth thinking about. And then, I mean, I look at my life now and I got to build a sanctuary. I mean, how many people and the whole of their lifetime get to build a sanctuary?
Not many.
Not many. And I got to build a sanctuary. I mean, God
Amazing.
allowed me to be able to build a sanctuary.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so cool. That is just the best. And I said to Peter, I don't care if I never build a house. I don't care. Because I got to do something that is just so amazing.
Amazing.
So out there. And so those things that God gave us, the position he placed us in, the wealth that he had brought around our life, they were all his anyway. So it didn't matter, you know. It could be gone in a second,
So true.
you know, and it was God's. So if he wanted us to use it, we'll use it.
That's very good. Wow.
Yeah. I'd rather God take it than the enemy rob it.
It's so true. We walk into church week after week,
Yeah.
and we just so take all of that for granted. I think we forget the price that was paid and the sacrifice that our generation actually have. You know, I was thinking about, Liv, you're talking about the toilets, right? And Pastor Peter mentioned it in the staff meeting a few weeks ago, and I'd totally forgotten about it. But I actually got saved in a classroom at Rangitoto College, and I thought, it was so random how I got saved. I'm not making this about me, but I'm more about the sacrifice of what you guys actually laid, and I don't think you probably understand the seeds that you have sown, and what it was is I just had a kid randomly turn to me when I was 14 at high school and say, do you know God? And I was like, I'd never thought of God. I mean, I'd grown up in a family, I hadn't actually thought about it. And when he mentioned it, I thought, I bet you he prayed those corridors as he cleaned those toilets. And there were seeds sitting there in Rangitoto College.
That's
and
amazing.
there's seeds that they've sown financially for us to have what we have. And I just want to say thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you. Genuinely thank you.
Yeah.
Don't make me cry, Cole. But it's God's multiplier.
He is.
He's totally. When I listen to you and to Cal, and then to Paul Grubb did that session for market makers. Honestly, you guys, you need to listen to that session. It's just incredible. It really is. And it talks about the seed that was sown, so that now when they were in lockdown and when there was this hard time for everybody, they didn't lose any of their employees. They didn't have to put off any staff because they had already, God had took care of all of it, you know, and there was work for them when they came out the other end.
Amazing.
So there was no problems. But you can't, it's too late to sow the seed when you actually need to eat the fruit.
Yeah.
You know? But these guys had sown the seed, and so when it was time to eat the fruit, it was there. So we did it, but you did it.
Yeah.
Paul and Ruby did it. You know, so many people do it. They sow the seed faithfully, and then when a drought does come, oh my goodness, there's fruit. It's there and it's ready. Yeah. And it's too late to sow when you need to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bit late.
They need to grow.
So good. Awesome. Wow. Thank you, Pastor Bev. That's been so great. And it's such a blessing to hear your story and a bit of your testimony and a bit more about you. Like I said, we hear more from Pastor Peter. And this is such a nice opportunity for us. So thank you so much. We will be back. Thank you for joining with us, and we'll see you next time.